obviously if we get to like AGI and it's like can do everything anybody can do, like all bets are off, and it's like, okay, that's a whole different thing. I do think that's a really interesting idea, kind of bringing AI into SQL. And I would not be shocked at all if we get some SQL extensions in the future to the standard that basically incorporate the ability to invoke models and do predictions right inside your SQL statement. Nobody uses Git like, like as it was intended, like this distributed thing. Like usually you have a centralized repo and you should like pull and push and anyway, don't get me started.
Okay.
Anyway, Emacs and VI, next question.
Some people are just born engineers. They start by tinkering with radios at the age of 10 and then move on to hacking punch card systems at their high school. And before you know it, they're laying the groundwork for AI investing through venture capital. Today, we're going to sit down with Ilya Kirnos, a veteran engineer turned founder who built some of the most impactful systems at Google, has scaled startups from zero, and is now laying the groundwork of AI investing as co-founder of SignalFire. We'll talk to him about his evolution from Soviet-era electronics clubs to AI investing and machine learning. Welcome to Mastering Engineering. I'm your host, Jared Reyes, and we are going to talk to engineers along their path to mastering their craft. Thanks for coming, Ilya.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah,
it's a long trip for me.
Yeah, from your desk to the couch. So I want to start off with just a couple rapid fire questions. What drew you to engineering?
Oh, I don't know. I guess it was kind of innate. I was kind of born into it. I don't know. Always from earliest age, remember like being curious about how things worked and tearing things apart, putting them back together, and I guess you could say I was born with it.
What was one of those examples of the early days tearing something apart that you can remember?
So I was really into electronics, so like making radios and kind of soldering iron in hand kind of thing.
Okay.
Which is ironic because I ended up hating double E in college. I just like gravitated towards software. Just it was a lot less messy. It was a lot of tinkering with radios when I was younger, actually.
And soldering, like how young were you actually soldering things?
I mean, I must have been around 10 when I kind of started doing it. Actually, I don't remember. I'd have to ask my parents.
So there was some of that stuff was around the house. What did your parents do?
So one little thing, I grew up in what was until age 12. I was born in what was then the Soviet Union. Okay. Now is Ukraine.
Yeah.
So all the stuff was like you could like put yourself back, 30 years or whatever, 40 years. There was what you would call like little clubs you could join.
Okay.
To do this kind of stuff.
Wow.
Yeah. It wasn't around the house. It was like these little activities that you could kind of find and do.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, we don't have anything like that, I don't think, in my neighborhood.
Yeah, I think it would be like today would be the equivalent of having like a robotics club at school or something.
Sure.
You know what I mean? It'd be like that. Yeah.
What was your first ever tech project? We can skip forward from 10.
That I can tell you we did at my high school, they had a punch card scoring system for tests.
Okay.
So when you were taking a test, you would mark your answers on this punch card, like multiple choice. You would say A, B, whatever. And then they literally had like, a punch card scanner that would take these things and automatically compute, kind of give you the output, right? Yeah. And then we created software to help teachers grade these tests. Huh. And early kind of interesting use of data science was you could take a given question on a test, right? Let's say it's a math test or whatever.
Yeah.
And one thing that we try to do with the data was tell teachers whether a question was good or not, meaning, or hard or not, meaning you would take all the students, for example, that got A's on the test, right? And then look at the questions they got right and wrong versus students that maybe didn't do as well on the test.
Yeah.
And so you could say, okay, all the students that got A's, these are the questions they got wrong. And all the students that didn't do as well, here are the questions they got right and they got wrong. And then gave you kind of a sense for, is this a good question to ask? How challenging is it, et cetera, to the teachers.
Is it indicative of intelligence
or
something?
Yeah, exactly. So an early use case of big data.
That's awesome.
in the classroom.
Wow.
Did you know then? You're like, I'm gonna go work in big data at some point.
It wasn't data. It was just like I love tinkering with computers.
Yeah.
That I knew.
Yeah.
I knew. There were kind of two things I loved. Was tinkering with computers, and I liked math. And it was always a question like, what do you want to do for like as your career? And I ended up majoring in computer science and minoring in math for my undergrad, and eventually sort of decided it was like I liked the more applied stuff, and so ended up going more into software engineering and gravitated toward computers. But that was always there, it was always an interest for me.
Was it odd to be tinkering with computers at that time?
Yeah. It was not like today. I was my coming of age in computers was in the age of like modems and bulletin board systems, BBSs, and that was definitely not a mainstream thing.
Yeah,
it was like a subset of kids that were kind of tinkering with this stuff. And even when I went to college, at Princeton, my graduating class in computer science was, I think, only 30, 40 students.
Oh my gosh.
And today, I think, I just went to my 25th reunion. I was told that like it's probably like 400 kids a year now major in computer science.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
So it was definitely, back then, it was like a niche thing. Today,
Yeah.
of course, it's more mainstream.
That must have been fun.
Yeah, yeah, it was something.
After being at Google for a decade, what inspired you to co-found SignalFire?
So I left Google in mid 2012. I joined it when it was like, hundreds of people, quite small. And by the time I left, they had just acquired, I think they acquired Motorola, and they were like 150,000 people. And my passion was always finding kind of small teams going after big problems. And I think around that time at Google, it was sort of, I looked around and it was like very large teams going after huge problems. It was like search and Chrome and ads. I always kind of knew that I wanted to do something entrepreneurial. And if you look at kind of my career, it kind of almost goes into like logarithmic stages of company size. I joined Oracle out of school.
Okay.
First job, that was like, I don't know, 10,000 people. Google was like less than 1,000 people.
A startup.
After Google, I joined a small startup that had like 10 people. And then after leaving that company, I was started SignalFire from the ground up. And so I kind of worked my way down the logarithmic scale.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's not common. We just did the report, the engineering career report,
Yeah.
and we found that the majority of engineers go from big company to big company or small company to small company.
Interesting.
Very little transition.
Okay.
I do wonder if that's indicative of something about you, of curiosity.
Probably is just having like the entrepreneurial bug in addition to sort of like the tinkering with computers bug.
Yeah.
Right. That's kind of the
Yeah.
combination.
That's a winning combo. If you
Or it
weren't-
could be a losing combo.
if you weren't in tech, what would you be doing?
Ooh, great question, man. I don't know. That is a great question. I mean, maybe like a career in math or something. I guess you could still, let's say it's like tech adjacent because it's like a science, academia or something. But it would be one of those, or maybe like an entrepreneur in some non-technical field.
Okay.
Those are the things
Okay.
I could imagine.
Yeah, maybe you'd be starting robotics clubs or something.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so Ilya, these are going to be some rapid fire this or that questions.
Okay.
You'll have heard some of these before, but I just want to get your gut instinct, your first immediate response. Python or C++?
Whew. C++.
All right. Spaces or tabs?
Spaces.
Spaces. Tried and true. Build or buy?
Build.
Cloud or on-prem?
Cloud.
Okay. I think, yeah, we'll see how you feel about that in 10 years. Debugging or deploying?
Debugging or deploying. Usually you deploy and then you go debug. So it's hard to pick just one.
Well, I mean, a very different engineering type would over-index on the debugging, right?
I see what you mean. Just like getting it perfect versus just like getting something out there.
That's
I would
right.
say deploying. I would say deploying in
All
that
right.
regard, yeah.
Whiteboard or terminal?
Explain that one to me, like for tinkering,
If you're gonna
ideation.
start something, where are you
Yeah.
gonna start it?
Terminal.
Terminal.
Yeah.
Okay. Speed or stability?
Ooh, speed.
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 I like that. I'm a speed guy too. Okay. Code reviews or pair programming?
Code reviews by a mile.
Explain.
I don't know anybody who actually pair programs. I know that's like a thing. And I tried that at Google. Like there was a phase where that was like a thing. And very quickly people were like, no, this is too annoying. I don't want somebody like looking over my shoulder. And
Okay.
it's just weird.
Yeah.
Let's just like go off, like do this solo single player mode.
Yeah.
And then I'll send you the code review when this is ready to be looked at. Let's do it that way.
So I'm very biased. I learned pair programming. I learned how
interesting.
to program. Literally sitting next to Elliot, my co-founder on a company we were starting, and I had to learn PHP and I had to
see.
learn Bash.
I see.
Those are the two things I just had to learn right out of the gate. And he would just sit next to me and he would walk me through every Bash command I needed to know, every PHP
Interesting.
line of code that I was getting wrong. He would be like, "No, try this." And about 3 months into that, I was off on my own, and then I was more into the code review.
Yeah, but so maybe to learn and get up to speed. But I'm just saying, like, as a day-to-day thing where you're like working on your features, whatever. I don't know a lot of places. Like, I know it's like a thing people talk about, just
Yeah.
like test-driven development or
Yeah.
agile or whatever. I don't know anybody who like fully does it like to the letter. I don't. Yeah, it's like because it's a lot. Well, like you're taking up two people's time.
Yeah.
It's like a lot to give up.
All right, last one.
Yeah.
Scale a startup or lead a large engineering org?
I think scale a startup. I mean, just like looking at my career path, like I think I've kind of self-selected into that. Yeah.
Yeah, now all you do is help people scale
Yeah.
startups.
Yeah.
What's the best technology you've worked with and why? This is go off on a tangent. I thought you were gonna ask me what is like the most overrated technology you've worked with. And I have an answer for you on that. It's Git. But let's not go into that. Whoa.
Nobody uses Git like as it was intended, like this distributed thing. Like you usually have a centralized repo and you should like pull and push and anyway, don't get me started.
Okay.
Anyway.
Have you ever tried
Overhyped, most overhyped.
Get revisions, get diff? Have you
Yeah,
played
all
with
that stuff
Oh,
is
that's-
good,
that's
but
fun.
it's not like like Perforce has it too. Like it's not this like Git came out as this like distributed thing where it's like the Linux kernel maintainers each
Yeah.
had their own
Yeah.
copy and stuff.
Yeah.
Nobody uses
I
it.
thought you were
that
going to say
way.
you're just an SVN.
I think I probably used SVN at Oracle. Yeah, I probably did.
That's funny. So what is the best technology you've worked with?
Ooh, that is a great question. Wow. Now, I mean, like, there's a lot of technology. Are we talking about like production when you're running stuff in prod? Are we talking about technology stack, like which database, which layer? I mean, there's so many technologies you
Yeah,
work
I
with
tend to
day
think of
day.
this as what's the thing that's just always there that has stuck with you through your whole career?
I would have to say SQL databases.
Yeah.
I mean, my first job out of college was at Oracle in the database group. And then I think literally every single job since then, I've dealt with databases, and most of them have been SQL databases. And whenever they weren't SQL databases, that turned out to be a huge mistake. So I'd go with SQL databases.
We use SQL a lot here at
Yeah.
SignalFire.
Yeah.
It's been like a rebirth for my career of getting back into SQL.
I mean, SQL was born, what, in the 1970s?
Yeah.
Hard to think of a technology from the 1970s that's still as relevant as ever.
Yeah.
Maybe more relevant, and that would have to be SQL.
Yeah, well, if you consider databases started in, I think an airline officially was the first database. And it was only like a couple decades later that SQL existed, and then we just stopped innovating there. We're like,
Yeah.
we nailed it.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's innovation, but I think like this, the notion that you can kind of program in a higher level language, as opposed to going down to like the record layer and like telling the machine exactly how to fetch things. It's, you got to describe the results that you want, and the optimizer will go figure it out. That has stood the test of time, and of course now there's all kinds of new stuff that's being added to the standard and everything,
Yeah.
but it's continued to evolve. But as As far as I know, every single like attempt to replace SQL has kind of failed. It's sort of like the de facto like lingua franca of data.
Yeah, it's not a perfect language. I'm wondering, have you used AI with SQL yet?
Yeah, so we have, and a lot of these databases have now extensions for AI. So like for example, BigQuery has its own like you can select and like apply a model to a column or whatever, or to a result set, and do predictions or whatnot. And there are startups in this space that have done interesting things. I do think that's a really interesting idea, kind of bringing AI into SQL. And I would not be shocked at all if we get some SQL extensions in the future to the standard that basically incorporate the ability to invoke models and do predictions right inside your SQL statement, and then write the result set out to a table or whatever it might be.
You heard it all. You heard it, everybody. He's ready to invest if it's there.
Yes.
What's the biggest up you've experienced personally?
Okay. I can give you one. The problem with working on like large scale systems is like any little thing can be like a big fuck up. But I remember one, I worked on conversion tracking for AdWords.
Okay.
So that's kind of the feature where you allow advertisers to basically not just track the click, but if you're an advertiser on Google, what you care about is the actual conversion. Like if you're eBay or something, or Amazon, you have an ad on Google, but what you care about is, does somebody actually purchase something, right? Because that's how I make money. And so Google added a functionality to allow advertisers to basically put some JavaScript on their website and then report to Google once this conversion took place. And so we could close the loop for you and say, this ad click led to this purchase. And now you can compute the ROI and all of that stuff, right? Makes a lot of sense. And so we launched this thing, and there was a bug. Long story short, there was a bug, and the data wasn't flowing through.
Oh no.
And so like all these advertisers were just like, this isn't working, like what the hell? Yeah, we fixed it, but yeah,
How long did it take to find it?
it was probably on the order of like a few days.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
because we weren't sure like what's going on.
Yeah.
And like data wasn't showing up, or was like partial data, incorrect data, and then we had to go like debug this thing, and it was I screwed up.
On the grand scheme of things, that doesn't seem as bad as like dropping the production database or.
I never had that honor. I remember. This is a funny like Google story where it used to like engineers had just like full access to the production databases.
Yeah.
And there was something where an engineer logged into our production database and did a query on one of the tables that was, I had a lock on the table.
Okay.
And then they went to lunch. And it turned out to be like, I think it was like he didn't realize the table was going to get locked.
Yeah.
But basically it meant that nobody like all the customer queries were piling up and like couldn't use it. And like he had to be tracked down, and it was like his laptop or whatever that he had with him. So it was like a whole thing. But yeah, whenever you have a large scale system, stuff like that will happen.
Yeah. Well, remind me to tell you about when I leaked some keys at Twilio.
Oh.
And in about 3 hours, someone racked up like $15,000 in Google Cloud usage.
Nice.
Not some Bitcoin mining was happening
Nice.
with my keys.
Nice.
What's the weirdest engineering solution you've ever seen or implemented?
I don't know about weirdest, but I thought it was kind of really surprising way to attack a problem was, I remember at Google, one of the, I don't know if you remember, did you mean like the spelling correction at Google? Kind of like when you typed in a query, like Britney Spears or whatever, and it went, like spelling correction. It was a really cool project in that you didn't want to have like a fixed list of words that you could spell check against, because like things are always changing in pop culture, and like new words and like new names and all that stuff, all these variations. And it was really looking at sessions, and whenever somebody typed in a query and came right back and did another one, that was like a signal that they didn't find what they were looking for.
Sure. Yeah.
Right? And then eventually they would type something in, and they would click on a result, and you wouldn't see them again for a while.
Right. Yeah.
They're like, oh, that's the right answer, right? And so the insight from that was, hey, let's look at these sessions And whenever you have a long session when somebody's typing in like a variation of something, those are all misspellings, and the final thing is the correct spelling. And so like, did you mean basically took the last thing in the session before you went away, and that became kind of like the suggested answer.
Oh.
In some ways, like, you know, again, big data, like
Yeah,
precursor
yeah.
to all this kind of ML and language models that we're seeing today.
Okay. Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Let's move on to predicting the future and VC engineering. So,
Okay.
what's something in engineering today that will feel ancient in 5 years?
Something in engineering today that will feel ancient in 5 years. Emacs and VI. Next question.
That might already feel ancient.
People are still using this stuff. It's crazy to me.
What's the one tech innovation you'd welcome into your personal life that you don't have today?
Oh, I would love to get Waymo, like self-driving cars, down to where I live. They're here in the city, but they're not quite down to South Bay to where I am right now.
Yeah.
That'd be cool if we had them.
What about like robot assistant, like laundry and
Laundry would be cool. We already have a robot vacuum cleaner. It's pretty good. It still like gets tripped over wires and stuff, but they're getting a lot better. What else would be interesting? Yeah, like dishwasher. I'm in charge of taking out the trash and loading the dishwasher in our house.
Those are good jobs.
So if somebody could automate that, I would miss those jobs.
We're almost there. We're almost there.
Okay.
There's going to be a lot of engineers watching this who are on their career path towards where they want to be, right? For them, what do you think the greatest opportunity is for them to focus on right now?
Ooh, you know, there's this whole question of like, what is the impact of AI on software engineering specifically? Because that's certainly one of the areas where LLMs have probably had the most profound impact. If you think about it, like it's kind of creative writing, like copywriting and code generation. I would think that you definitely want to be using the current set of tools and trying to understand, incorporate them into your work and understand how to get the most leverage out of them. And keeping a close eye on all that stuff, because that seems like, you know, if progress continues at this space, that could have a dramatic impact on our profession.
You know, I've heard some speculation here that what AI is doing for engineers is it's leveling the playing field to some degree, allowing people to build past their current skill level. And to combat that, I've heard, you know, one thing that engineers should focus on is first principles and actually being really solid at something, specializing in something, being really good at something. Being, you know, trying to still be the best is still an advantage when everyone else is kind of AI leveling up. What do you...
I would agree with that. I mean, I would think that, you know, obviously if we get to like AGI and it's like can do everything anybody can do, like all bets are off, and it's like, okay, that's a whole different thing. But in the, let's say it's kind of like in this mode where it's very good at giving you interesting suggestions, but you still have to curate and choose what to implement and what to discard. Well, how do you choose? Right? And having the understanding and the fundamentals would still be quite important in that world. Maybe more important because, you know, proficiency with like bit twiddling or whatever maybe less important, but understanding kind of like high level design principles and kind of systems, architecture, all of that may be more important. So I'd agree that, you know, I don't think the fundamentals will ever not be important. If anything, maybe kind of the lower level stuff will be more automated.
Great.
Yeah.
So go deeper, get better.
I would say so. Yeah. It can never hurt.
I still wondering if I'm an engineer and I've got an idea, and I want to approach Ilya. I want to get your excitement around it. You know, the thing I'm thinking through is like, I know how this technology works and I'm really excited about it, but how do I get you excited about it? What's the things that you're looking for when you're hearing an engineer tell you about their product? You know, is it just like, go as deep as you can, tell me how this product works, or is there something else you're looking for from an engineer?
Yeah, look, I mean, it depends on the product. If you're in kind of a large existing market and you're just saying, my product is, I'm betting on technical differentiation. It's going to be better, cheaper, faster on the technical dimension. Then by all means, I want to hear all about the technology because that's like the big driving factor.
Yeah.
And let's go deep in that. Let's get as technical as we can to go explore that. If you're in a domain that's a little bit less kind of betting on a technical innovation and more on a business innovation or a go-to-market innovation or a new distribution channel, I know technology can play a part in that, but it's not like the core of the thing, right? And so there, maybe it's a little bit more about, tell me about like who your customers are and why they would find this product appealing versus the alternatives or something else. So just kind of like depends on the domain and like the main thrust of your differentiation in your idea.
Interesting. That reminds me of something you said in 2017 on a TechCrunch panel. You said,
better memory than I do.
You said if you are building technology, then the first thing you should get is an engineering org. If you're building a hardcore tech product, but if you're building like a social viral app, the first thing you should get is traction.
Yeah.
And it sounds like you still believe that.
I think so. I mean, I think history would suggest that that's the case.
Yeah. I do wonder if everything needs traction now. That's one of the questions I have.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. I mean, it depends on the stage and what
Yeah.
traction, like, there's different kinds of traction, as you know, but I mean, it never hurts, put it that way. It never hurts.
All right, well, let's talk about some other predictions.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Okay.
So we just had a company offsite, and
Yes.
This is informed by some of the things you said during that, which I would love to dig into.
Yeah.
But I want to start with something that Mark Andreessen said in 2015, which is that software is eating the world. And his prediction was that everything was going to be software. Every industry was going to get disrupted by software. And in the preceding decade, it certainly seemed like that would be the case. But since then, it feels like there's some industries that have actually resisted software. As like they've maybe have implemented some, but they certainly aren't replaced by it. The things I think of are like massive logistics, worldwide shipping.
Yep.
Software helps those things, but it's
Yep.
not like there's
Yeah.
the Uber alternative, right?
Yep.
Or the Instacart alternative for freight shipping right now. So I'm wondering if you think that we're nearing the end of kind of software eating the world, and what do you think comes next?
Man, I mean, it depends on what you mean by software, but like AI is just software too, and it certainly doesn't feel to me like we're nearing the end of that. If anything, it's picking up steam, and software was a tool, and what we're seeing now is AI may be able to, instead of being the tool, it might actually be able to do the thing for you in a lot of ways, in a lot of cases. Not all, by any means. From that perspective, I would say kind of we're maybe just getting started. I think software is going to be a thing. It will continue to exist. I think, AI is, to me, is just an extension of software, and will continue to gather pace as well. So from that regard, I would say I'm still a techno-optimist.
Yeah, so software is certainly in everything. As we're looking to where we think innovation is the most exciting, as you're looking to where you think innovation is the most exciting, does it look different than 2010 software as a service companies? Like, where do you think the innovation is going to happen? Almost like as a market, where do you think the exciting innovation is?
Yeah. Well, I can just tell you kind of like where we're investing, because that's informed by our perspective on all this stuff. Right now, we're kind of looking at a lot of, if you think about this, the AI, the software stack for AI, let's say, but more generally, you can think of it as a layering of technologies. There's the hardware layer, like, NVIDIA, et cetera. There's the model layer in AI, OpenAI, Anthropic, et cetera. The infrastructure tooling layer, and then there's the application layer.
Yeah.
We are very active, have been in the application layer in the last couple of years. Selectively active at the infrastructure layer, and I would say very surgical at the modeling layer, and have done nothing in hardware.
Yeah.
And so I think in the near term, call it the next 3 years, I think there are going to be a bunch of verticals that get transformed by AI and software.
Yeah.
The number of verticals that's kind of like ripe for being sort of eaten is expanding because of the new capabilities of these models, is what I would say.
Sure.
Now, if you look out 3 to 5 years, let's say, I mean, I think there's this like huge open question of what happens with AI and AGI.
Yeah.
Because we're here kind of like talking about all this stuff. It's like, I don't know, do you watch Game of Thrones?
Yeah.
So, you know, like they have all these like, you know, petty squabbles and the big battles like in the north.
Yeah,
the
exactly.
Wall, you know?
Yeah,
like
yeah.
they're going to destroy us all.
The Walking Dead.
The
Yeah.
White Walkers. It's like, you know, like it's fine you have all these verticals, but like if AGI is a thing, then that's like a whole different ball of wax.
Yeah.
I don't know what happens in that world.
Yeah.
It's hard to make predictions because of that.
Yeah.
You know, I'm still kind of on the fence personally whether it's going to happen or not. I don't know. Like there are smart people who are very confident it will.
Yeah.
There are smart people who are confident it won't.
Yeah.
Even if there's some chance that it happens, you have to prepare for it.
Yeah.
And so, but hard to make predictions about what happens in that kind of world.
Well, Ray Kurzweil said by 2020, most diseases will go away as nanobots become smarter than current medical technology.
Yeah, predictions are hard, as it turns out.
But in 2017, you said, when asked what technologies you felt were overhyped.
Yes.
I don't know if you remember this, but you said
I must have said
Autonomous
self-driving
vehicles
cars.
are overhyped.
Yeah.
and we'll end up having a steep correction. We are at least 10 years out from wide availability on these things.
That's pretty good, I think.
Maybe, but I've taken...
I know.
Waymo
Yeah.
all over the
So
city.
maybe, so now we're 7 years, right? 7 years removed.
That's right.
We're actually,
That's
wait,
right.
17, 8 years.
Yeah.
I don't know, 10 years and 8 years? I'm in the ballpark. And what do you mean by wide availability? They're here in San Francisco,
That's true.
but I don't know that it's like wide availability to me would mean like over 50% of the US has access to it.
Yeah.
You know, I think we're probably a couple of years away from that.
Yeah, I actually think you kind of nailed this.
I think I might actually.
Did anyone bet you on that?
I bet people. Truth be told, I am a betting man. I like to bet. And I made some bets with individuals, with people, and 2 of them I collected this year.
That's fantastic.
I won the first 2, and then I have another couple that are kind of a year or 2 out.
Okay,
On the 10-year time frame.
Sure.
And we'll see what happens there. Yeah.
That's awesome. Making a bet on stage, by the way, at TechCrunch is a baller move. Okay,
Final thoughts.
what advice would you give to engineers to scale their careers?
Yeah, I mean, I guess in some ways it depends what you how do you think about scaling your career. Do you want it to be a engineer in kind of like big tech? Do you want to start something eventually? Do you want to be at more kind of smaller companies, startups, and do that?
Let's say to engineers who want to start something, what advice would you
Yeah.
give them?
I would say develop these different muscles. Actually, it was unintentional when I was at Google that I did all these interviews, for example.
Yeah.
But it turned out to be a really valuable skill. And so if you think you'll ever be in a position of starting something, guess what? You're going to have to hire people and recruit and interview people. And being able to, like in an hour interview, have like a pretty good nose for whether this person is going to work out or not. If I hire them, super valuable skill.
Yeah.
So try to develop that. And then, on the kind of other kinds of sales, even at big companies, you can sort of be close to or more distant from customers. And so, I remember going to like conferences and like manning the booth or whatever. That's something you can do as an engineer.
Yeah.
And help you develop kind of some of those skills,
Yeah.
like selling skills.
Yeah.
But yeah, depending on what it is you want to do, I think those are all transferable skills. And the other, I would say, disadvantage I had at Google was from a technical perspective. Google had a highly proprietary technical stack.
Yeah.
Like everything was build, not buy.
Yeah.
And so when you leave, I had to like a lot of the building blocks I kind of knew, like Google had Borg and Kubernetes was like the external thing. AWS had to pick up, but a lot of the building blocks you could pick up pretty quickly, but maybe sort of like try to use or learn transferable tech skills. And like speaking of SQL, that's a very valuable one that you can apply and will continue to be valuable. So having a great understanding of like SQL databases will be valuable. Knowing some of these technologies and languages, very valuable. You can hit the ground running and be off to the races.
Awesome. To wrap it up, you mentioned at the beginning that you've always been tinkering, and you really just fell into this because you always wanted to take things apart and see how they worked. And I'm wondering, are you still doing that? Are you still tinkering and taking things apart?
In some ways, yes. I mean, in some ways, like the startup process is that, because you're taking, by definition, when you're starting something new, you're a little bit kind of like the underdog. You have to find some new way to come at things from like the side versus directly head on. And so understanding, it's maybe for a very technical product, it can be a technology tinkering thing. Yeah. Like this can be done better, cheaper, faster kind of thing.
Yeah.
But for, just general businesses, one thing I love learning about is new industries, new verticals, and understanding what makes them go.
Yeah.
Right? Like what makes this tick? Because that then can inform evaluating a new approach. Maybe there's something else we can do here that's better and looks at things from a different perspective. So, I think tinkering with markets maybe in some ways is kind of what we're doing now.
Totally.
And like playing with ideas and tossing ideas around and, like for that kind of thing, this is like, I joke, I've kind of crafted my perfect job because I still get to do like the software, the engineering part, mostly nights and weekends now. But, my days are taken up by, hearing like some of the smartest, most innovative people in the world come in and kind of share their ideas with us. And we get to sort of like tinker with them in whatever it is they're building. And so maybe that's like a direct path, you can draw the line from tinkering with like electronics to what I'm doing now.
Yeah, well, I see you in Slack. And you're, every once in a while, you'll just drop a question in engineering where I'm like, oh my God, he's really in the stack.
Yeah. I can't help myself. And it's like, what is it? They say like Elon plays video games for fun to relax.
Yeah.
I like looking at our code and our like dashboards for our, our observability.
You like looking at market data instead of video games. Well, Ilya, thank you so much for sharing your journey and your story. And I think, for a lot of engineers, myself included, it's inspiring to hear how you got here and to see you still in the
Thank you. Yeah, this is fun.